I'm super excited to talk about all of the things that you're working on.
Thank
And first of all, let me introduce to our viewers Tristeza Ordex, who is una luchadora based out of Texas, doing amazing work as it relates to advancing Latino veterans, a veteran yourself. So, super excited to have this conversation and a dear friend where we're building community around all of the groups that in this moment in time in our history in our country where Latinos are under attack. So thank you folks for joining. Catherine Pichardo here, President and CEO of Latino Victory, and very much excited. So we'll just jump right in. Tristeza, why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this work?
Well, primeramente, muchas gracias for the opportunity to be here to host this live and allow Vote Vets to be a guest and me too. It's a real honor. I've been following Latino Victory for years, and several of my candidates that I've managed here in Dallas have been Latino Victory Fund champs. And friends of mine like Maxwell Frost in Orlando. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about what we're doing at Vote Vets. So let's get the first thing out of the way because todos están pensando, is that her real name, Tristeza? So yes, my name is Tristeza, Triste for short. My dad just loved the sound of the word. So he named me. My mom did the spelling of my name con Z instead of S. And so I know a lot of people are like, ¿Por qué te pusieron Tristeza? And, it was just something that my dad, when I was little, he'd be like, Yo sabía que iba a tener hija única, so te quería dar un nombre fuerte. And I'm like, I know you're doing that to gas me up, but no one can say my name. Pero ahora I carry that name with so much pride. It has so much significance. And even to bring another meaning to that word, the tristeza, for me, I'm somebody that's strong, that wants to learn and grow and fight for our community. And so, I come from a family of immigrants. My dad came to the U.S. from Mexico. My mom and my dad was both migrant farm workers. And it was working in the fields, even to the summer of my senior year, that I was like, esa no es la vida que quiero para mis papás or for me. Like they came here, my family came here for other opportunities. And so what does that look like for me? And during that time, my mindset wasn't on going to school. I was like, we can't afford it. No sentía que tenía el apoyo academically para entrar a la escuela. And so it was the Marines. And I joined. I was recruited out of Oregon, went to boot camp right away, and it was quite an experience. And everything that I felt that I wanted to get out of my military service of why I joined, I've been able to do. I joined because I wanted to take care of my family and especially my parents. And estoy en una posición ahora where I can do that. And coming out of the Marine Corps is how I got into this work. And because of my parents, in 2016, it was the first time I ever voted. It was the first time I ever paid attention. I was fresh coming out of the Marine Corps. I, got out in September 2014, started going to school, and then we had this person that announced that they were running for the presidency and said these ugly things about Mexicanos. And para mí me dolió, because I lost my dad during my deployment
You
in
can name
Afghanistan.
names here. There's no no
Just wanna
filter.
make
This is
yeah.
our Latino Talks Unplugged.
Oh, okay, okay. Ahora sí para saber. And really, that Trump making those egregious comments about Mexicanos really, really captured my attention as somebody that was very apolitical in the military, as a lot of us are. Para mí, I was like, I literally just got out of the Marine Corps. How dare you say stuff like that about people that look like me or have served or even our family members. And that kind of spiraled into this, how do people get elected and how do people vote y todo, like that. It wasn't even a concept for me because like a lot of immigrant families no hablamos about these things at the kitchen table. We talk about cómo sostener a la familia, cómo salir adelante, how to be good, to make sure that we don't bring attention to our families, and make it every day. And I I got into first veterans organizing work, organizing veterans on my campus, talking about issues of student veterans and addressing the issue of veteran suicide. As somebody that was trying to figure out things with my own mental health after leaving the Marine Corps, I was like, I know this is a thing. I don't know what all it is and what it means for me, but I need to talk about it. And then I caught the bug from there. Someone was like, "Have you ever thought about being an attorney?" And I changed my degree plan from education to political science. And I've just continued from there. I've worked with really great legislators here in Texas. Ramon Romero, I was his deputy district director. I got to serve as district director for Victoria Nieve Criado here in Dallas. I got to work on Rochelle Garza's campaign in 2022, and so many amazing other Latinos that have inspired me and supported me as a woman veteran. And now, in this role that I'm in as the national organizer for partnerships and engagement, one on the or on the engagement part, we want to bring veterans in not only to tell us their stories, but to get them involved in our Vote Vets Champs campaigns to get great people elected. And on the partnerships is to create one, to continue to strengthen the relationships that we currently have at Vote Vets, but also bring in new partnerships like with Latino Victory Fund and others that should be a part of this conversation, because veterans look like me too. And they look like you. And they look like all the other folks in our neighborhoods. And we need to have those conversations about what our experiences are when we serve in the military. So I'm really excited to be able to dig into this conversation and, talk about belonging and patriotism and all those things that we also represent.
For sure. And I appreciate you being part of this discussion. One of the things that we always talk about within the organizing space is how we bring real stories, right, to the fore. And perhaps in communities where they're not familiar with our input, whether it be economic value and Latinos being such an important part of GDP, or the fact that one in, every four new potential voters is going to be Latino. And certainly in terms of our presence within the folks who have served our country, served in our military. Um, your story resonates a little bit with me. My brother signed up for the U.S. Army immediately after turning 18 while he was still in high school.
Oh,
For many of our families, the military is a way to build a future.
yeah.
And today he's successful, also still serving our communities within law enforcement. So um, let's talk a little bit about that, right? Often you hear politicians, particularly on the right, talk about how much they support our veterans and how they value those who have served. But what we see in action is often um, contradictory to this
Yeah.
narrative. And somewhere along the line, like we as a country have lost perspective
Yeah.
of what the reality is, right, in terms of these stories that you hear versus what's real. um so I know there are a lot of concerns that Latino veterans are uniquely attuned to, particularly as it relates to immigration enforcement around the border. You live in Texas. I know we're going to be visiting the border
Yeah.
next month. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the concerns that you're hearing from Latino veterans about what's going on in America today.
So one of the things, I meet with a lot of veterans and organizational leaders in the veteran space. And this is a question that has come up actually for me through several other organizational leaders that are like, hey, tell me what you're hearing. And the thing is that veterans are concerned. We fought to defend the Constitution, and the Constitution is being violated. People are getting kidnapped without due process. You have working class men and women at Home Depot and other places, our food vendors that are they're working, they're contributing. Like you said, like the contributions that we make economically to this country, they're doing that, but they're getting scooped up in these ICE raids, and veterans want answers. They want to know. And the other part to it is not just what they're seeing if they're not directly connected to the, if they're not being directly impacted and they're seeing these things that are happening, but we do have families. We have stories like Narciso Barrancos, a father of three Marines, two active duty Marines, and a veteran that served this country, and he was assaulted by ICE agents and was kidnapped. And that it's concerning. You have people like George Retes, a US citizen, a veteran that expressed that he was a disabled veteran and he was terrorized, traumatized. So this impacts everybody. And the thing that people are saying, pues, do it the right way. People that are doing it the right way, including spouses and parents of military service members, are being picked up at their immigration appointments. So it's not about that. And veterans want to know what the hell is going on and what is being done to make sure that this is right, because this was not the deal. And even for those of us that, did not vote for Trump, the ones that did are also being affected by this, and they're seeing things differently now. And me quebra el corazón that this has to be a wake-up call for certain folks. Pero I hope that having conversations like this and people being more vocal, sharing their stories of impact, really sets a greater focus on this issue, and that it can come to your doorstep at any time. And I know that myself, being Latina, that even my veteran status can't protect me.
Yeah, and it's kind of almost feeling that you've served your country, but your country doesn't serve you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the messaging that I've gotten from some folks who are service members, who are veterans, that feel a little bit disillusioned, right? Like they uh even some who may have voted for Trump and are getting buyer's remorse because
Yeah.
they understand that what was promised has not been what they've seen in action, what's being delivered. This is an administration of broken promises. So, certainly immigration is one aspect where you're seeing a lot of butting of heads, right, between what's being said and what's actually being done, and certainly something that we're working towards. Another issue that's come up for me, and I don't know if you've seen it, is around the concept of the military being deployed to cities
Yeah.
across the country, or potentially being deployed to cities across the country, with this sort of perception of we're about to restore law and order. Meanwhile, they're actually causing more trouble than they're worth,
Yeah.
and intimidating entire communities. Um, in a move that to many of us seems like the beginnings of authoritarianism in the
Yeah.
United States of America. So we have a president, supposedly the leader of the free world, and here we are with pictures of him at public buildings and firings of administration officials who don't agree with his political views, and inserting himself in a redistricting fight for
Oh,
purely political motives, which, by the way, is also racially motivated.
yeah.
So there's so many things, right, that for those of us who've lived somewhere else are very obvious. Um, Tell me how veterans feel about all of this. Is this something that's registering, and can we help support our military personnel and our veterans in this moment, as they see themselves potentially deployed to police their own people?
So veterans and military service members, as I'm sure you've probably seen, like things that we've posted through our social discourse channels, things that we've put, through in the media to talk about that the militarization of our communities is not something that should be happening. That does not restore order in anything. What it does, it creates fear, like and intimidation, like you said, which is exactly why the current administration is doing this. It's exactly what they're trying to do, and we should call it what it is. In my own neighborhood here in Dallas, as we've seen an increase of ICE presence, and me as a U.S. citizen, as a veteran, and as a mom, to have a conversation con mi hijo de 20 años and tell him, hey, I need you to carry around this card in your wallet, and I need you to know who you need to be texting or what you need to do with your phone por si al caso algo pasa, because we have had ICE presence on our college campuses and at our in Dallas ISD on our other campuses, elementary, high school, and stuff, and it's scary. It's scary that porque yo me pongo a pensar, back in the late '80s, early '90s, where I grew up in Oregon, in Woodburn, Oregon, and it was a big migrant farm worker community, and experiencing when people would yell "La migra" and the panic it would cause. And it's like seeing that again. And when I joined the Marine Corps, I was like, I'm glad que mi hijo or que mi familia, mis hijos nunca van a tener que ver esto. And my son is living that moment.
Little did
And
you know.
little did I know, right? And then, que I would be doing this work, pero I think because of that reason, I'm so much more encouraged and empowered to be like, I know what that's looked like cuando yo era niña y vi esto pasando. What are the things that I can do to support my community, as we navigate this? And, I live in Texas. I live in Dallas, but everyone knows that our border here in Texas is very militarized. You mentioned we're going to be doing a border tour soon, and one of those conversations that is going to be really important to this is going to be what's going on with Operation Lone Star. And the thing is that for me, it's nothing but a political stunt that has been going on for years. It's like Greg Abbott doing cartwheels over and over again hasta que se canse, and he hasn't been tired since he launched Operation Lone Star. And all he has done is wasted Texans' taxpayer dollars on this fictitious border crisis. And we need to really be talking about what things are happening there, how it's affecting the border community economically with putting hundreds more people there that have to get food, water, and housing and so many other things, how it's affecting the environment, the land over there, and how it's affecting people's mental health. Because veterans, many of us have been deployed, have been on patrols, or have seen patrols. And to see that in your neighborhood is scary. And I don't want to see, I've already, like I mentioned, seen ICE and DHS presence. I don't want the National Guard to be in my neighborhood here in Oak Cliff. My neighborhood's predominantly Latino. A lot of immigrant families live here and have built this neighborhood here in Oak Cliff. And I don't want to see other neighborhoods like mine, neighborhoods like in Brownsville and McAllen that have National Guard members, or like in LA where they put Marines like me on these streets, Marines that are not trained to police their citizens. They're trained for other things. And so we need to make sure that, again, like we're talking about these things, we're calling our reps, that we are sharing our stories of impact, because those that might feel disconnected from it can literally sometimes plug in because of an experience that we share.
For sure. And, this a couple of days ago, I was at a event that we co-hosted with Governor JB Pritzker in Chicago. And really, it was around, you know, what we need to do in this moment to protect and defend our communities, and the political work that we need to do also to build a pipeline of representation for Latinos, as well as win back the House next
Yes.
year. Because at the end of the day, right, and we're jumping to the political conversation, but at the end of the day, um, right now, we have a president that has our rights under attack. We have a complicit Congress, and we also have the courts, which are stacked by the president himself. So we really need to, as a community, as Latinos, but also as allies, to continue to push back, so that we can retain some of the rights that we have earned for years and years and years. It really does bother me that my daughter today has less rights than my mother did.
Yeah.
Um, and we could start there and take another, 2 days on a Substack
Yeah.
to talk about all the issues. So you mentioned mental health. Let's talk a little bit about that. At a time when healthcare is being cut. And we know that veterans have long struggled with some mental health issues because of everything that they've had to face. What are some of the things that you think our government should be doing to address this issue? And what do we as allies need to do in this moment to help support that cause?
So I love the conversation around mental health because I feel, and I've had this conversation with our Vote Vets crew as well, that we can't miss that piece. Mental health is so important. And as a Latina, a lot of times no hablamos about mental health. No, ve y limpia algo, you'll be fine. Go
De
be
eso no se
something.
habla.
Yeah. And in my family, we talk about it very openly. One, my family has had to see my own struggle with PTSD after my service. And so it has become something that we're very open about here at home. And I think that it's very important to. I did an interview with Rep. Ted Lieu a few weeks ago, and we talked about all the cuts that are happening. And it's going to affect veterans very, very much because the thing is that sometimes for those that do not get 100% VA medical care, they supplement with Medicaid, Medicare, things like that, and or their own private insurance sometimes if they have that. And taking jobs away is not going to help us get services. We need to increase the jobs. We need to put more doctors, more nurses, more support staff. And cutting those things back is going to be very, very, very dangerous, especially as it relates to mental health. As someone that goes to therapy, and this year alone, there's a lot of things that I have personally done to manage my mental health because this whole thing that's going on with immigration has really affected me. And I wanted to do the proactive thing to make sure that I was able to talk to someone in a healthy way to be able to process the things that are happening. Trauma doesn't go away because traumatization stops. It's something that you carry in your body, you carry in your mind for years. And sometimes you don't know what's going to trigger that PTSD. It could be the smallest thing. And the reason I share that is because I spoke with a veteran a couple months ago that shared a story with me of their friend who was pinned at a gas station by ICE, had car front and back, and asked them to identify themselves. And the veteran shared with my friend that it triggered his PTSD. And he was like, I've done a lot of work to be good, and I can't have that happen. And so I can't imagine the folks that have already experienced that and the many more that are going to get caught up in this if we don't put a stop to what's happening. Because even when we stop this administration from doing this, there's going to be a lot of healing to be done afterwards. And what I would say is for anybody that's suffering um, with anything with their mental health, there's a lot of resources. Connect with organizations out there that can possibly either provide services or recommend someone. Um, don't hold it in. Cry about it. Be angry about it. Feel the feelings, because we have a lot to get through. And no matter what it looks like for us showing up, some of us go to the protest, some of us don't. Some of us talk in conversation, share our stories. Some of us help build websites to make sure that people can get in contact with whoever. Whatever it looks like for you to show up, do that in the most healthy way, but you have to take care of yourself. And I always say, drink water.
For sure. And I what I will say is for anyone who would like to get in contact with Vote Vets, give them your website so they can access any services through your organization.
Yes, that would be amazing.
So what's the website they can go
Oh, for
to?
our website, sorry. Go to votevets.org. But also, folks can reach out directly to me on social media platforms, on Substack, on Instagram, Blue Sky, on X at Triste in Texas. And send me those information so that I can share them. Like I said, mental health is such a big portion because, as a Latina and as a veteran, navigating my mental health in the most responsible way is so important to me. And I want to help people be able to do that.
And we have a comment from Alejandro. He says, drink water. Ha ha ha. Which, listen, sometimes we are so focused on the work
Yeah.
that we forget. Um, some folks in my family laugh about the fact that oftentimes my lunch is a bag of Cheetos or a bag of potato chips because that's all I have time to grab before while the day is
Yeah.
going on. So I want to turn to the work that we are engaging in, and as folks know, on this platform, Latino Victory is very much focused on building Latino political power at all levels of government so that our voices and values are represented in the policies that move our country forward. If we're not at the table, we are on the menu. And so I'm
Yeah.
excited for this partnership with Vote Vets because Latino veterans are such an important um, part of our community. And so I know that we're going to be working together on training veterans, recruiting veterans, folks who want to run for office. I encourage everyone to visit latinovictory.org. If you're running for office, we want to talk to you and help support um, important campaigns in districts where representation matters. At the bottom line is Latinos are almost 20% of the population, but we only represent about 2% of elected officials. And so that's a long bridge we're
Yeah.
building to build, and a gap we're filling up little by little. And so I want to thank you, Tristeza, for the time. I thank you for your partnership, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to working with you. Again, folks, if you want to learn a little bit more, go to votevets.org, go to latinovictory.org, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and making sure that our issues are addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.